Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Thursday edition of the Canadian Immigration Live Q&A. I'm here with my co-host, Alicia Backman-Beharry. How are you, Alicia?
I am doing well, Mark, and I am happy that the summer weather is continuing, but I wish there'd be a little bit of rain. It's been so hot and dry in Alberta these days.
Yeah, it sure has. It's been, as I look out our little flowers, if I do not keep those suckers watered,
Yeah.
they are drying up and the little petals are wilting. And I'll tell you a funny story. Jessica was doing something in the backyard. I don't know if she was hosing off one of our little paddle boards or whatever. And I have two sprinklers. Long story. The front and the back are on separate systems. The one outside, they forgot to pour this conduit when we put our sidewalk in, so that the irrigation pipe went down. So we had to set up a separate one outside that's battery powered. Well, anyways, it's got a separate water system, a water line, and Jessica, not knowing, turned the water off to the main valve that fed through the sprinkler. And so for about 3 or 4 days, I was away a couple of days, and I came back. I'm like, what is going on with the flowers? Because last year I was smart and I wired in this little hose so that it dripped the flowers. So whenever the irrigation went on, then it watered the flowers. And I have it just run for like 5 minutes each morning, and it's perfect. Well, yeah, I was like, what's going on? The grass looks a little bit drier, and it was really hot. And then I walk around, I'm like, what? The valve is turned off. And then we figured out the root of the culprit. And so now everybody knows how the water system works. But yes, we live and die by it, do we not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have I've got some good vegetables growing, and I've got pumpkins growing on my deck this year. I tried them in
Oh,
pots and they're actually about, I don't know, about that big now. So I'm trying not to kill the pumpkins, but they just look terrible until you give
uh-huh.
them some water in the morning.
Then they come fresh and back up to life. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is like it's dry. It's not like my cousins live up northern Alberta, and they tend to get a little bit more rain than we do. And the one thing that I noticed absent as I was driving through the countryside was irrigation pipe pivots
Yeah.
and wheel moves, and these irrigation for the crops, which we live and die by here in southern Alberta, which is pretty
Yeah.
arid. It's pretty desert. And but up there, nope. So lots of fields, and it's interesting the
Yeah.
change even within our own province. So
Absolutely.
there we are. So there you guys go. That's a little update with what's going on here in Alberta, the best province in Canada, of course. Welcome to all of you who are joining us. We are YouTube only, you guys. We've made the decision at this stage that we're only going to broadcast our lives straight to YouTube, and we'll see if YouTube likes us a little bit better. It seems like none of them like to play the same in the sandbox. So you'll see, like I talked about, if you attended my live yesterday, we are going to be transforming our videos a little bit. For my live Q&A, I want to let everybody know that we have a new system for selecting the questions for it. And when you tune in, you can put your question in, and then when you attend live, you can actually vote on the questions that we are going to make our feature question. So even with Alicia's podcast, going forward, we're always going to start by answering a big question. Then we're going to take that big question, cut it out, and upload it directly to YouTube and to LinkedIn, etc. And we think we'll probably get a little bit better result. But this is our live stream. YouTube's been fairly kind to us. We crossed over 42,000 subscribers, which is awesome. But it's now time for us to level up. And we also want to let you guys know about a bunch of things that are happening even within our own website. And so if we flip back here to our firm website, we've talked about this a lot, but there are a ton of resources. And if you go to our resource page and then go to the blog posts, you will see that there is now a search button here right here. Because we've been pumping out so many blog posts on different topics, you can go through now and you can actually search the page and find more information. You'll also see right here is you can subscribe to our newsletter, and you get notified about any new blog posts, new videos that we're constantly producing. And you guys, right now, we've got 3 live Q&As going. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Cedric goes early in the morning on Tuesdays. I'm Wednesday, and Alicia and I are here on Thursdays. And so all of this is designed to help you. With the questions, our focus is trying to really, really drill down into information that you guys want to hear most. Then at the ends, we'll flip to the Q&A section. So we're going to go through a little bit of news and updates in terms of what's happening within immigration. And then we'll dive right back in and start answering all of your questions. So when you do get ready to ask your question, we'll give you the green light. And then at that stage, put a Q in front of it. And then we will go through and pick the ones that are going to be the most benefit to everyone. So let's just go through a few little updates. I think a lot of you we ran a poll yesterday in the live Q&A asking what people thought would be the CRS scores for this upcoming round of invitations. And we had ranges, and I had said between 520 and 525, and I wonder what it was. So they extended it to 2,250. And so there were 525 candidates were invited. And no program specified draw. I should say the lowest score, the lowest ranked candidate had 525. And so, we're seeing a steady trend downward, aren't we, Alicia?
In terms of CRS points, yeah. So it was really high, and we're slowly working our way down to something a little bit more reasonable for most people, but it's still pretty high.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we know, Alicia, that the minister's got to say something next month. And there's a lot of speculation. The CBA, we provided a submission to the minister on some examples of what he could do with the international students. And that's really the task that he has ahead of him. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Alicia?
Yeah, and yes, they have announced this open, for people who were postgraduate work permit holders for that certain time period and range, then they are looking at being able to apply for this new open work permit. So that is helping to ease things, but it's not a permanent residence pathway all in itself. So
no, it's not.
Mark, you've spent a ton of time working on this postgrad work permit 18-month extension course, and it is really important that everybody does this correctly, because I can see what's going to happen. People are not going to understand the nuances of how to do this application properly, and it's a one and done. If they don't do it properly and they miss their window of opportunity, this is going away. There's no, recapture of time. You can't keep trying to get this extended again. It's, if you don't do this properly, you may lose out on this chance. So very important that people do this absolutely correctly. And Mark's course is hopefully going to guide you through that process. So only 197 US.
Yeah, that was one thing I wanted to point out, Alicia, is that, like, we know in the technical briefing meetings that I had with IRCC, they confirmed that these work permits are not going to be issued for at least 120 days, probably, like the regular time. They're not going to expedite it because the minister's grand edict that you can all work. Now, we're looking at this right now, the reality that some of you did not get that email.
Yeah.
We're trying to find commonalities. Chanel was telling us just this morning that two people she spoke with both had prior refused work permits in between getting the postgrad work permit, it basically expiring. And so maybe that had some impact on them getting it, which of course is just, maybe the system didn't capture it because it was only looking for postgrad work permits that were recently expired, not a subsequent follow-up one. Maybe, who knows? Others are saying that it went to the wrong person. Well, we know, at least through discussions we had with IRCC, that it was really the TR to PR pathway folks that were eligible for bridging open work permits where that original technical glitch occurred. But hey, we don't know. So what we're looking at now, and this is something that we're probably going to do a blog post on, what do you do if you haven't received it? Can you start to work? Can you work anyways? Is there enough authority to do that, even if you don't have the fancy letter and your employer's willing to accept it? That's stuff that we're going to be releasing, and there's lots of speculation. And I'm also going to reach out through my fellow table officers. I have about 2 more weeks on the national executive, and we're going to try to reach out to IRCC and seek some clarification on that. Because for most people, I think what they're seeing is that IRCC is just saying, no, we send them all out. It's not our problem. And I guess the last little piece of advice that I'll tell everyone is that if you used a representative for your other application, there's a good chance that the email went there. And do you have contact with them? Because if you don't, then that can be a problem. And then I recommend, you book a consult, and we can show you how to pull back your post-grad, that previous one, to your GC key if you haven't done it already. So just some things to think about. Mm-hmm. But
Yeah.
the course, yes, Alicia, the course is, this will be open. And I have done, as you can see here, we've done 2 master classes already. But as people continue to purchase and subscribe and go through all of the lessons in the material, and yes, there's the certification for consultants, etc. But this here, I am going to open up new master classes as well, which is really a powerful aspect to all these courses. So as more people register, then I will open up additional master classes in the future. But yeah, this is going to be open. People say how long? I say forever, which forever means December 31st, 2022. And this now comes back to the question, Alicia, which is the volatility of getting this wrong. If you get it wrong, you won't know until likely after December 31st, 2022. And then if they return it because it's incomplete, well, what happens, Alicia? What options does
Well,
somebody have?
and this is the problem, because I'm also hearing from people who, I have 2 different fact scenarios. One was somebody applied for a TR to PR international grad stream, but they weren't actually eligible. They didn't have a 16-month course. They only had an 8-month course, and it wasn't a master's course. So they had no underlying basis. So that work permit's going to get refused. And now they're trying to figure out, well, how do I save this post-grad open work permit for 18 months? But you can get in really sticky situations if you're going to get a refusal on a different application before you get your current application considered on this open postgrad. So same thing, if you have that open postgrad work permit that for some reason gets rejected because it's incomplete, it's not a complete application, then your whole status is going to fall apart, because if you don't have a completed application, it's as though that application never existed at all. So be really careful. But we digressed a little bit, because to get back to your question, Mark, about what the minister is going to do, is there should be some sort of new announcements come September about what the Minister of Immigration is going to do to try to help all these people who have been international grads, who've worked in Canada, who have skills that Canada wants to keep, try to find some way to transition them to PR a little bit more fairly, more easily. We're not sure what it will look like. It might be tweaks to the Express Entry program. It might be a whole new stream altogether. But as of May 11th, the minister had, a ticking time in which they had to announce some sort of new solution, which will be September. So we'll see what happens.
There'll be lots. And trust me, you guys, we will have information as soon as possible. I think back to this course, Igor and I flipped this sucker around in 2 days from the announcement. So this is what happens. We understand how urgent this stuff is for you guys, and anything that we can do to make your path easier, we do it. All right. As far as announcements, I think that's pretty much it. Those who are new to this, remember, if you go to our channel, make sure that you subscribe. When you click on the videos, we'll stop this one here. It will prompt you to have the ability to ring the bell and get notified when we go live. But like we talked about before, with our with our newsletter, and I'm just going to jump all the way back up here on the Canadian Immigration Institute page, you'll see that you have the ability to subscribe to our newsletter, and you will not miss an announcement or anything that we have going on. And it's also a really good summary of the most important things, the most important blog posts that we've released, information that's truly relevant. And so make sure you connect in here and fill in the information and get that newsletter sent out. And we're going to be doing that weekly. So watch for that. All right, Alicia, should we jump into some questions now?
Let's do it.
Okay, we've got a few little shout outs. Joe, good to see you. He's in Calgary with you, Alicia. He says, lovely to catch you both. Zeal's in Mississauga. And make sure that you guys drop a little hello to us. We're not able to get to everybody, but we'll definitely try to hit a few. The Floral Chic says, hey, Mark and Alicia. I think Floral Chic joined me yesterday. Good day to both of you and your amazing team. Thank you so much. And those of you who are posting questions, we'll get you to repost those now. So T. Lee's over in Jamaica. Good to see you. Welcome. And just a reminder, try not to spam you guys with the same question over and over again, because you'll find yourself having to ban you. And I don't want to do that. But when you post the same question a lot, well, we want to give everybody the same shot at it. Okay. Lima says, good morning, Mark and Alicia. Good to see you. Lori says, hey, Mark and Alicia, hope you're doing well. And shout out to Lori. It's great to have you here as well. And you can see here, this first question from Sarah Vanan says, hey, Mark and Alicia, some people didn't receive the work interim, even though they're eligible. We're all sure that we have the right email address, and also our consultant didn't get it. So this is one of the issues that we've kind of identified. Did you apply for a subsequent work permit and that was refused? And maybe that was an issue. Now, remember, this doesn't prevent you from going through the course, learning how to file your application properly and doing it. But what we don't know for certain is, without that email, if you can just boldly go forward. And so that's watch. We will be producing a blog post on that and further information. So watch on our website for that. All right. T. Lee says here, happy for all your help, and may God continue to bless your efforts. At Alicia, I'm growing crops too, but it's tomatoes. So there's other people with green thumbs.
Perfect. Teely, I am growing tomatoes, but just along the garage, and tomatoes in Alberta are hard to grow, so they're very babied and protected.
All right, next question is from DS Martinez, and this is looks like a spousal one. He says, Mark and Alicia, is it common to visit Canada through an ETA and then use the visitor record to prolong my stay past 12 months to meet common law requirements? How is this method perceived?
And this is actually interesting. I had a consult just this week about a very similar kind of fact scenario where a lot of people don't understand the differences between an inside Canada spousal application and an outside Canada spousal application. And one of our blogs, I wrote an article precisely about this to try to compare and contrast. Well, what are the differences? Who can apply? Where can you apply from? And if you
let's test out our search feature here, see if it works.
Let's test it out. There you go. So there we go. It comes up inside versus outside Canada spousal sponsorships.
The search feature, it's the first time I tested it. It works.
Great. So here I'm breaking down, inside versus outside Canada and where the applicant has to be. So one thing to keep in mind is, if you are doing an inside Canada application, the principal applicant, the person who is the Canadian spouse, needs to physically be in Canada in order to sponsor that person. It is possible to try to submit an application as an outside Canada sponsorship, even if both of you are physically inside Canada with valid visitor status. So yes, to answer the question, if that person, the person being sponsored, the principal applicant, came to Canada as a valid visitor under an ETA or even under a TRV, a temporary residence visitor visa, and they're in Canada, and it's a legitimate relationship, that person could be sponsored. Now, the default rule is that when you come in as a visitor, either under an ETA or a TRV, you're only granted 6 months, even if they don't stamp your passport. And so you must make sure to extend your status before it expires. If you've done that and you've now lived together for 12 months, continuous cohabitation, well, maybe you do meet the definition of a common law partner, and maybe you can then submit that spousal sponsorship application. But there's a lot of other moving parts in the spousal sponsorship, not just eligibility, it's also what is the genuine nature, whether it is a genuine relationship. And that's where you've got to talk about a few more things about how long you've been together, what's your dependency on that other person, what have you shown the world in terms of, are you a couple, or is it just kind of a boyfriend-girlfriend? So it is possible to go that route, DS Martinez, but it's going to require some care and attention in terms of how you put that application together, and you've got to tell the truth, and it's got to be proven to be a bona fide or genuine relationship.
Exactly. All right. Next question. This one is from Nisha. And she says, will there be any CEC only draw or just specific draws like hospitality workers? I wonder if Nisha's a hospitality worker.
So I guess there's two things. There still is the possibility that you're getting a PNP nomination. And so the provincial nomination categories depend on each province, and some of the provinces are doing targeted draws, and they're giving those letters of nomination depending on their own provincial criteria. So it might be that you are targeted in the province where you're residing, and you could possibly get a PNP nomination, which is going to give you those extra 600 points, which might then make you eligible for an all program draw. So that could happen. So far, we haven't seen just a CEC only draw since they've opened them back up this year, and we'll have to see what happens come September when the minister is supposed to be announcing new measures for permanent residents for people who are in Canada and who've completed Canadian studies and work here.
All right, next question. This one is from Kiran. And Kiran says, hi from India, Mark. Can I apply for a tourist visa and later inland spousal sponsorship application? Would it come under dual intention, online application, or paper-based? Which one is faster? And that's interesting that she would bring that up, because right now, Alicia, I'm actually going through our spousal sponsorship course. Today is the last day of master classes for this course. We haven't yet announced when the next one is, but this is something that we specifically talked about. And, I know there's a lot of different schools of thought with this. And Alicia, you recently had an application approved pretty quickly, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so this is another thing that, for sure, this is a good question, Kiran, and it follows up on the previous question, because you always have to show dual intent. So if you're coming as a visitor, it can't be that you're coming here to live permanently. You have to still maintain the ability to go back to your home country and prove that you have ties to your home country. So yes, you still have to prove that you have temporary intent, even if you are pursuing a permanent residence application. In terms of whether you do an online application or a paper-based application, this looks like it's a little bit of a moving target right now. There was some commentary from other lawyers this morning that I was looking at as well, seeing faster processing times, way faster than we've seen in the past through the online applications. So maybe things are starting to shift to immigration officers starting to process those online applications faster than the paper-based applications. It had been that the paper-based applications were a little bit faster in the past. It does depend on whether you're doing an in Canada versus an outside Canada family class application. So the processing times are much longer for outside Canada right now based on the posted processing times. It's 23 months, whereas in Canada is closer to a year and a bit. But what we've been seeing in real time is that I did have clients who submitted in March, and she has her passport request, electronic, well, not electronic, but paper-based confirmation of permanent residence, and is going to travel to Canada already. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
and that's like 5 little months.
Four and a half months, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's interesting. One other thing I guess I'll point out too is, there's other factors that you look at when you're trying to decide if you're inside Canada and you have a current work permit and you're looking for a way to maintain it. Sometimes people come under, IEC, international experience, or there's other factors at play that allow them to have an open work permit and they want to continue working. And there's been a little bit of volatility, like Alicia said, with the online process. And the process of getting a spousal open work permit in conjunction with a spousal sponsorship is different if you apply online or via paper. And so I am still advising people that if they really need to maintain work authorization, they're cutting it close, they're running out of time, that it may be better for them to choose to file via paper. Even though the overall processing time might be a little bit longer, if they do that and include an open work permit with it when they file via paper, then they can benefit from maintained status and continue working. Whereas if you file online, you have to wait till you get the acknowledgement of receipt and then submit a separate spousal open work permit. Now, if timing isn't an issue, then I'm really starting to come on board with the online filing, Alicia. It's a lot easier. You get immediate confirmation it's there. And theoretically, if they get processing these, then, and we start to see positive, processing times, then it's a no-brainer that you would do it that way. If you have a spouse that's overseas, especially, if you were filing it by paper, they need to sign, and often there's the issues of sending original documents courier by mail and all those kinds of
Mhm.
things, that it all gets washed away when you're filing online. So
One thing Yeah, one thing to note too, and I hear a lot of people are confused about this. It is not possible to apply for an open work permit as a spouse under an outside Canada class sponsorship application. People always are confused about that. They're like, great, I filed my spousal outside Canada. When do I get my open work permit? You don't, right? So it's only if you happen to have valid status in Canada that you could do an inside Canada class application, and then you're looking at that open spousal work permit possibility.
yeah, exactly. All right. Next question here. Oh, well, it's not a question, actually. This is back from Floral Chic. She says 197 is nothing in regards to making sure it's correctly done. Really great offer that those who need this should take rather than risking refusal. It's interesting, Alicia, when I did this, I also had, I think it was like 25 bucks I charged to actually watch me make it. And I think that's what I'm going to do as I go forward, including, as I do updates to the Spousal course. And we've got a bunch of other courses that are on the website right now. But I think ultimately going forward, as I make these, I'm going to follow the same pattern I did with the postgrad. So if there's a new program that's announced next month by the minister for international students, absolutely, I'm going to be making a course, and I may even offer a really really low rate for people to watch me make it. It's just like you're attending a lecture. There's no access to recordings or anything like that, but or the tools and things. But thanks, Floral Chic. I think people are like, oh, all Mark's trying to do is sell his course. Well, I just talked with two people today. I love these, Alicia, who both used the courses that I offered, and they did book a consult or two. And both of them, the consult they booked today was to talk about landing and what to expect. And I love those, to see
Yeah.
how people have benefited. And when I have these courses, boy, like I can teach hundreds of people at the same time. And, when you're charging 197 versus, what we usually charge, like $2,000 or something, and people learn, we teach them everything we know, they're well set up. All right, let's get to our next question. So this one is from T. Lee. And T. Lee says, hey guys, I'm worried my 1 year postgrad work permit is wasting because I'm unable to travel now. I applied outside Canada and I'll receive it at the border. Will I still get the 1 year or just what remains when I do arrive? Now, we're missing a few things here, T. Lee. We don't know if this is the new program you're talking about or if it's your first postgrad and you just happen to be outside. If 1 year is the max you can get. But Alicia, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of how work permits are, the durations are established?
Yeah. So, of course, you've got to meet the eligibility requirements for the postgrad work permit if it is the initial postgrad work permit. So, if this is the first postgrad work permit, if you completed your studies and for some reason you went home, then make sure that you're applying within the window of time from when you've graduated. You've got all your documents to back that up. Um,
Sorry,
oh, and I
so
think
that, yeah, I did. I flipped it over here. I'm busy
that's okay.
working away here. Just give me 1 second. Now I'm trying to remember which one I had. Was it Tanuj? I
It
can't.
was Teely.
Teely.
Um,
Oh, Teely. Sorry. Just sorry, guys. It's been one of those days. Just give me a second. We'll find Teely's question again here.
no worries. I'll keep going. So, on the
Yes.
postgrad work permit, when you apply, you're going to make sure you meet all the program requirements. So whether it's the initial postgrad work permit or now maybe you're looking at this open work permit because you already had a postgrad, now you have one what was expiring or will expire within the time period required for this new program. It is a good question because sometimes people are going to apply and then it's not going to be actually issued for a number of months. And I don't know about you, Mark, but I have seen some variation in terms of
Yeah.
how officers actually code the start date on those work permits. And some of them will go back to the date of application, and some of them will give it as the issue date on the day that you enter. And so this is interesting, and we'll have to see because the processing times are longer or potentially longer than they ever have been on this. And so this might make a big difference and eat into if you're eligible for a 1 year
Yeah.
postgrad, are you going to get that full year, hopefully, on that postgrad?
All right. Okay. Let's now jump to Tanuj here. So I have a valid TRV till August 2023 and interim work authorization letter. When I travel and come back, will CBSA allow me, even if my postgrad extension is not approved by then? I also have a permanent job. So this is, yeah. What are your thoughts on that
This
one?
this is tough. I mean, I assume that you have submitted your postgrad work permit extension. It sounds like it because you're not sure whether it'll be approved by then. Maybe you haven't submitted it. I don't know. So the valid TRV, yes, you should be able to travel. Interim work authorization, though, if you're not inside the country, they have clearly said on the website that that interim work authorization letter does not by itself give you the authorization to work if you are not physically inside of Canada when you get it. So it's going to depend on what happens at the border. It also is going to depend upon whether you've already submitted that postgrad work permit extension application online or not. Um, so you do have to be really careful because you've got to answer these questions by the CBSA officer truthfully, and you have to still show that you have the permanent intent. And it might be that they are not going to actually allow you in on a work permit. They might allow you in on the visitor visa, but they may not grant you that work permit at the border. They may just let you in as a visitor, and you're going to have to wait for those normal processing of your online extension application and then receipt of that work permit. So this is an open question.
All right. Next question is from Fabio. He says, working remote for a US based employer from inside Canada. So, what would the country or territory be under employment section of the 5710, Canada or the US? I entered US, not sure. Correct. So, hopefully, Fabio, you haven't filed it yet
Yeah.
and have decided, hey, I'm going to go over here, take the course, and attend the next upcoming masterclass. But it kind of suggests that maybe, and I love it when you guys, I don't love it when you guys do this, but after you already submit it, then you're like asking the questions. Anyways, what's your thoughts on this, Alicia? How do you fill the 5710 in when the employer's outside Canada and you're inside Canada working remotely?
So this makes, well, it makes a big difference on what kind of application you're filing. So I'm assuming that you're doing the postgrad work permit extension for 18 months, open public policy, but maybe you're not. And if you're not, then be really, really careful because that's going to affect whether you're working in Canada or working outside Canada, whether that's assessing if you're doing express entry, whether that qualifies as Canadian work experience or foreign work experience. So be really careful if you're not doing this postgrad open work permit extension. But even if you are doing the postgrad work permit extension, it can affect you later on when you're looking at your express entry or other economic class application for permanent residence. So keep in mind that if you're going to be claiming Canadian work or you want to claim Canadian work, you cannot be working remotely for a non-Canadian employer. That's never going to qualify you for Canadian work experience. So keep that in mind. And if that's the case, be really clear about that, right? That you have been working physically from inside Canada, but you're working remotely for the US employer. The pay stub, but your bank account is coming, it's going to a US bank account from a US employer paid in USD rather than Canadian funds. And you can do a little letter of explanation to make sure that you've clarified all of that. So that, yeah, it's tricky when you're doing those online forms. You have to put in a country, but you can't really explain. So if there's anything like that that requires further explanation, make sure to put it in your letter of explanation because immigration says it's on you to actually put that letter of explanation in and make it clear what's going on in your application. So same thing, if there's not enough space, I know on the IMM 5710, there's only 3
Yeah.
spaces for your prior work history, but they say you must go back 10 years. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, I only put in 3 spaces because that's all they gave me. Immigration says, we asked for 10 years, and if you don't provide the full 10-year history, that's your fault, and you ought to have provided an extra page or an extra table or written it in your letter of explanation. So be careful.
Nisha says, thank you, Alicia, for your advice this morning. Such a great person. I think so too. I think Alicia's a pretty great person. Lima says, hey, Mark, will you do a course of the new TIARTA pathway when it's launched? I'm excited. Want to be the first. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that our firm is really, really going to start pushing is making sure that there's always courses to match up with the things that are happening. And I'll be honest, guys, I'll tell you why, because we know as, as lawyers that you're always going to be able to find someone that will offer alleged services to support you for less. And ironically, I just had a consult with someone this morning who went through our courses and did the express entry, and it was one of those appointments for landing on what to expect. And I was a border officer, so I've got a pretty good idea what they're looking at when people are coming through. But in this case, he had a friend who engaged a consultant agency, and I can't remember if it was Singapore or where it was, but the guy paid them $15,000, Alicia, to assist him with that process. And this client actually spent a lot of time teaching him what he needed to do on his application, including our knock selection tool and the other resources that we provide in our course. And it's so amazing when people come and book this. I can't tell you how many say, I should become an immigration consultant because now I know so much more than everybody else. So, so
Just to clarify,
a crazy
guys,
world.
we do not charge $15,000 for
Yeah.
express entry reviews. Even if we review every single aspect of your application with you, it is $4,000 plus GST. So that's crazy, Mark. That's crazy.
Yeah. There's our express entry right there. So good times. Good times. All right. Okay. Let's go to a few more questions here. Okay. Here's an interesting one. This is an express entry one and for other PR applications. Okay. So Mary says, I passed through several countries in Europe in a day on a road trip. Should I mention them all in an ITA? I think she means the EAPR stage, but
Yeah.
of course, we cover that in the course, but Alicia, what do you advise people?
Yeah. And this happens often, right? If you have clients who live in Europe, especially because basically your passport is never stamped. You just travel
Yeah,
around and now you get a question on an immigration form that says, give me every single day in every single country you've ever traveled to since age 18 or the last 10 years. And all of a sudden it's daunting, right? How many trips you've got to go back and find. So generally, there is a difference between entering and staying in a country versus transiting through a country. And so, if you have only transited through and you have not slept there, you've not officially entered there, especially if you're taking a flight and it's just a connecting flight where you're only in kind of the secured area of the airport, usually you can just write a little line about that in your letter of explanation that you transited through countries XYZ all the way to Q on this day,
yeah.
um, but list the country of destination that you're actually spending time in as part of that travel history.
With all of these things, you guys, the letter of explanation is your secret sauce. That's where you can try to navigate your way through anything that just doesn't fit well on the form. And the personal favorite of mine, Alicia, especially, excuse me, especially in the context of, say, a spousal application through the PR portal or any of the applications through the PR portal. When you're filling in the Schedule A background declaration form, often it says, please enter in all this information. Do not use abbreviations. And then they don't even give you more than, in some cases, 16 characters to put the answer in. And so it's infuriating. And then we know what the federal court has said when people try to say, well, you don't give me enough room. What am I supposed to do? The federal court has come back and said, well, too bad, so sad. You should have included a different letter to include that information that didn't fit in the form, which seems ludicrous to me. But at the end of the day, that may very well be the law that applies. And so that's why we created all the templates within our courses and with our clients so that they can make sure that what they're presenting, even though they're restricted by just the nature of the application process, whether it's online or otherwise, that they can fully answer their questions in a way that doesn't leave them with a refusal. So,
Yeah. Or worse yet, a misrepresentation.
yeah. Yeah. And that's, it's interesting to describe it that way. You can get a refusal, but what is worse is that misrep. And why is the misrep so bad, Alicia? For those who, of course, I'm sure everybody knows.
Yeah, if you're actually found to have misrepresented, so if there is an inadmissibility report and they've said you're inadmissible under Section 40 of the Act for misrepresentation, you now have a 5-year bar against applying to Canada for 5 years, period. And there is very little that you can do unless you have responded to a procedural fairness letter and they have not yet made that finding of misrepresentation and inadmissibility for it. In some circumstances, if you've just newly received that final decision saying that you have misrepresented, make sure to talk to us. Cedric is looking at
Yep.
doing federal court applications. That
Yep.
is his bailiwick. That is where he excels. And so he is able to help you filing that application for leave and judicial review. But it is very important that you do that within 15 days of
Yeah.
getting the decision. If you have received that refusal or misrepresentation finding, if you're inside Canada, or if it's an inside Canada application, and within 60 days if it's an outside Canada application.
Yes, exactly. And you can see on our page, we have a number of blog posts that kind of touch on this. I'm liking this
Mhm.
search feature. This is great. So yeah, all you have to do is go to our site, resources blog, and yeah, Cedric has he is going to tackle this, and his experience working on the other side gives him some really unique insight that he can use when he's assisting clients. So it's just used to enhance the services that our firm offers. Just like I used my experience working on the border and with the hearings officers, because I kind of it gave me a little bit of a mindset as to what goes through an officer's head when they're processing this. And if you can understand why they do what they do, then you can better prepare your applications to make sure that you're giving them your information in the way that they can best receive it, and that'll result in an approval. So yeah, so we definitely are excited, and if people are stuck in any situation like that, the judicial review option is the route.
Mhm.
Okay. T. Will Mott says, I work 7 years part time, okay, unpaid as a career counselor. Okay, so unpaid, that ain't happening. Can't believe you work 7 years part time unpaid. That doesn't make any sense. But, anyways, 4156 is the NOT code, but the paid experience is an administrative assistant, 1241. For my profile, I used 4156 instead of 1241. Was that the right thing to do? I'm assuming he must have said paid, because if you're whether you're working part-time, if it was unpaid, the work experience wouldn't be counted.
Mhm.
So I'm going to assume that you meant paid. But really, Alicia, like, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, they're both skilled positions, unless you're trying to target a particular province that maybe is looking for a particular skill set. Um,
Ye- Yeah, so T. Wilmot, take a look at the eligibility criteria to make sure that you're meeting the eligibility criteria. Because if in fact it was unpaid, then that is not eligible work experience. You can't claim that as part of what you're going to rely upon for your primary occupation. So if you go to the IRCC webpage, you're going to look at, all right, minimum requirements for express entry, and you've got to show, in order to meet the requirements for skilled work experience or part-time work experience.
yeah. So you can see here, right here is our paid right here. And
Yeah,
so if you don't have that, you don't even get through the gate. You don't
yeah,
even get through the gate when it comes to eligibility under the federal skilled worker.
yeah. So it has to have been paid in wages, commission earned. You've got to be able to prove it. You've got to have pay stubs, T4 statements, notice of assessment to show that you actually were paid in Canada, or I guess outside Canada if this was work outside of Canada.
Okay, Dragon says, "Hey, Mark and Alicia, good morning. When would be the ideal time to apply for GCMS after submitting a PR application?"
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you don't have to apply for GCMS notes, but if it's been some time and your application's stalled out and you don't know what's happening, well, you can do that access to information and privacy request. Um, I wouldn't recommend doing it every single time that you submit your application or right away after you've submitted your application, because not a lot happens if you haven't received your biometrics instruction letter, for example, or if you haven't received other communication from immigration. So wait a little bit. If you're in process, make sure that you have that application is made it onto the system and an officer has started reviewing it before you ask for your GCMS or ATIP. Normally, you wouldn't have to unless you think there is a problem. Definitely, if they have asked you for an updated Schedule A background declaration, you'll want to have it at that point if that's what's going on for you. So.
Mhm. All right, let's jump to the next question. This one is from Anna, and she says, hi, so I called IRCC regarding not receiving the interim. They said there is a note on my profile that I'm eligible for the interim, but I didn't receive it. How to get a copy, what to do. So once again, Anna, you're kind of in the same boat as so many other people. And, I'm going to make some calls. We're going to see if there's things that, that we can do. Obviously, if there's a critical mass enough of people, maybe they will consider reissuing or doing something else. But it's an extremely volatile time period.
So, Anna, I would say that is good news that you called and that they have
Mm-hmm.
seen a note on your file. I would make sure that you write down the time and date that you called, the
Agent
officer
number.
that you talked with, the
Mm-hmm.
agent number, ask them to tell you that so that you have some sort of written record of the fact that you did some due diligence and that you were told that by an IRCC officer. But sometimes it's hard to get that information. Sometimes it's hard to get through the call center itself.
Yeah, it is. Okay, another related question from Hina. IRCC agent says, I'm not eligible for interim authorization and have to wait until decision from a visa officer from Edmonton. Is there any way to get one? Please help me on this. Okay, this one sounds like one of these. So Hina, we recommend that you slide over actually and book a consultation so that we can look at this. These work permits are not traditionally just shipped off for further assessment. Now, Edmonton is the central processing center, so I'm not sure exactly in that situation if this is something that's been escalated for further review or if it's just normal processing through the case processing center in Edmonton. But whenever there's been any kind of a delay, then it becomes an issue. So it says not eligible for interim authorization. Well, everybody is, if your work permit is within that time frame, is theoretically, that magical grant, Alicia. I've seen it go to every single person, whether you're inside Canada, outside Canada. I guess theoretically, if you have some enforcement action or things like that, you can get tripped up with it. But if other than that, if everything, like you can even be out of status illegal, right? Since September of 2021, the 20th of September, if you'd fallen out of status and hadn't renewed it, even in that circumstance, people are getting these. So yeah, there's a lot more that you'd have to look at to be able to give any direct answer on this one. Okay. Samir says, hey, can I enter Canada for a holiday if my spousal application is still in process? I think you covered a little bit of that one.
Yeah. And this depends, Samir, if you submitted an in-Canada spousal sponsorship or an outside Canada spousal sponsorship. So if you are leaving Canada and then trying to come back in, it sounds like you've submitted an outside Canada spousal sponsorship and you want to come visit. If you're going to do that, the officer might ask you questions because they might see that you have a permanent residence application in process and you're coming in and you're seeking technically temporary entry. And so they might ask you some questions. Are you planning to live here permanently? Well, you're going to have to say, I have the ability to go back. No, I'm coming to visit and I have the ability to go back to my home country and I've got money in my bank account and here are my ties to my home country. And you're going to go through that. And you're going to probably show that you're legitimately married to your Canadian spouse and proof that you filed that application. But this is where you have to prove that dual intent. So be careful though, if you did do an inside Canada spousal sponsorship application and for some reason you left Canada and now you want to come back for a holiday, in those circumstances, theoretically, one of the risks on an inside Canada spousal application is that technically, if you leave Canada, they could cancel your in Canada spousal sponsorship application and say you've got to start all over from the beginning. So it does depend on what kind of application you submitted and where you are living.
Yes, that's why we say book a consult. Okay, this one is from Armin, and lots of people are asking this question, so I'll just show you guys the source of the information. So hi, Mark and Alicia, does receiving the interim email automatically make the expired SIN valid again? And I think lots of people are wondering, well, can I go back to work? Do I need to extend my social insurance number? Well, if you just go to the IRCC website, they have that answer right here, and it applies to any kind of maintained status. Okay, so as long as you keep working under the same conditions, and remember, if you're an open work permit, the conditions are pretty broad. But yes, the answer is yes. If you applied to extend before your work permit expired, you can keep working even if your SIN is expired. This is allowed under the Employment Insurance Act and regulations, and they don't go into big detail, but that's okay. Then when you get your new work permit, you can renew your SIN. So you can give your employer proof that you've applied to renew your SIN. Once you get a new expiry date for your SIN, you must give it to your employer within 3 days. So basically, you just hang tight. You can continue working. It's not an issue. Trust me, the government of Canada will not refuse to accept the remittances from your wages. So
But Armin, you might want to print out that web page from IRCC to show to your employer so that the employer knows, yes, you can continue to work.
I will post that in the group. So I just posted that link in the chat for all of you fine folks. All right. Okay, let's see here. Next one is, okay, so this is Joe. Joe says, hey, Mark and Alicia, when would you recommend I should take the course, the Express Entry course? On my last study semester, pretty sure I'll be buried in schoolwork and part-time. Well, Joe, obviously the course material you'll have for life. And it's just the masterclass session that is kind of time dated. And so usually when people do choose to subscribe to the course, if they've missed the masterclass, we usually try to open it up quite a bit in front of when we do the masterclass to give people time to actually go through. And there was a time when I just opened it up for 4 or 5 days, and then we had the masterclass. But there's so much content, like you said, and you're busy trying to finish school, that we find it's better to open it up about a month in advance. And I think, I'm trying to remember, it's all a blur now. I think maybe we did. Yeah, we did. So this one, for example, it's August the 18th today. And so in 1 month, we're going to open up the masterclass, but people can purchase the Express Entry course right now and start working through all of the lessons. Because remember, this, when you come out of it, like this is one of the things, one person made a comment. He said, after going through your course, I felt like I had way more answers than my consultant, and I knew more about them, more about immigration than my consultant did about the Express Entry process. And in fairness, most lawyers, you could probably say the same thing too. In terms of the knowledge of how the program works, and not everybody has really spent a lot of time diving deep into the inner workings of it, at least to the extent to which we have shared it within all of these lessons. And so it takes time to go through this, you guys. There's like 6 modules, and module 6 alone has an individual lesson for every single document. And there's templates and tools and sample documents and resources, as well as a complete walkthrough of every part of it, including completing the profile, etc. So the ultimate question, when should you do it? I always encourage people to do it well in advance, because if there's things you need to collect, you start learning about it well in advance. So when the time comes to actually get your invitation to apply, you are ready to go. So
yeah, I'll add one thing to that, Mark, and it's that a lot of people get tripped up right at the end of their studies. And a lot of people who've been working part-time during their school year don't realize that the day that they get either their transcripts, and this is in my article that I wrote on when can students keep studying after the end of their studies, but the day that you get your transcripts, your degree, or a letter from your school that says you've completed this program, you have to stop working, even if you still have that valid study permit, and even if regularly you're able to work 20 hours per week part-time, and you think you can work 40 hours per week during scheduled school breaks. It's not a scheduled school break when you've completed your program. You have to stop working at all, temporary, like part-time or full-time, for sure full-time. And then you cannot start working until you've actually submitted your postgrad work permit application. So make sure to go back, read this article. I wrote it when the TR to PR program was going full force, and a whole bunch of people have gotten tripped up with making sure that you've properly declared unauthorized work. If you didn't know this and you were working without authorization from the period when you graduated right until you submitted your postgrad work permit application itself. So be careful with that. Those are things that you will hopefully need to know ahead of time so that you don't get tripped up and you don't have misrepresentation on your application.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like we said, guys, with this, I'll just shrink the screen down, and I'm going to shrink it down so it appears normally. You can see here that we have right on our website resources, blog, and in the blog post, you can search all of the previous articles, and there's so much content. And everybody has been working really, really hard to produce really up-to-date, fulsome articles that actually give resources and tools that you can help, just like our online videos. All right. I see one other comment here as well. Kyria, you can see it's open. It's open, so you can take it right now. You can subscribe to the Express Entry course right now, and you have access to all of this for life. And as you go through it, you'll know your situation. You'll know the things that are probably going to be problematic. And when we do our lives in September 19th to the 22nd, you can queue up your questions. And in the masterclass for the spousal that I'm doing right now, today's the last day. Yesterday, it was awesome because I had a client. Let's see, where is it? Right, it's this one here. I had one of the students who, we have a private group, a community group where all the questions can be posted, and she had 11 questions that she had all in line with how to fill out one of the particular forms and how to answer the questions. Now, we had a lot of that information in the individual lessons, but it was an opportunity for me to open up the form, go through, and this is really, really in-depth stuff, far deeper than we have the ability to do here in our live Q&A, and then obviously all the other course material. So whether it's the spousal course, the post-grad, the express entry, or beyond, these are really designed to give you at your fingertips the same knowledge that we have, and to teach you to be able to get your application, to ensure that you submit it right the first time. So, all right. Okay. Well, I think we obviously weren't able to get through everybody here, but I wanted to just let everybody know that we are here for you in whatever way you need assistance. If you need just a little bit of help, you can book a consult. Obviously, you can go back and scour through the entire YouTube channel, and in every way that our blog post is searchable, so is the YouTube channel. And all you have to do is just go to the channel, click on the search button, and you can pull up many, many past articles, past videos, past instructional pieces of information. So all of that's available. And yeah, and then just stay tuned as these lives continue to evolve. It's a YouTube only kind of video now. So YouTube, we're just with you. We've decided to saddle the YouTube horse and ride YouTube into the sunset. So we'll cross our fingers that they will also like us, and their little bots hear me saying this. And so make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel and share it. The more we can get the message out, the more it just makes what Alicia and I are doing here worth it. If we know there's thousands of people that are watching these, then it just motivates us to clear off our time that we could be working on paid client work. And there's a lot of it. It just motivates us to do this. So I don't know if you have any last few comments here, Alicia, as we
Just a last comment there, Mark. On the website, sometimes people say, well, how do I find your YouTube channel from your website? And so same thing, if you go to our website and you go to resources, and then you look down, we've got the Canadian immigration courses, we've got the YouTube channel there, podcasts is also there, and then the Express Entry Facebook group. So if you're trying to figure out how to find our YouTube page from our website, it's under resources, YouTube channel.
Exactly. And also, I want to point out one last little thing as we wrap up, is that one thing, the lawyers are still trying to come around to it, but I'm going to do a Canadian Immigration Institute trivia, and we're going to do this periodically. I'm not sure how often I can convince them to do it, but we're going to have all four of us on. Igor's going to be our fearless host of the trivia. He's going to be our whatever, Alex Trebek or whatever you want to use as a reference. And Regis Phil, whatever. and he's going to lead, and he's going to ask questions about the four pillars of this thing that we're working on here, which is Canadian history, Canadian geography, Canadian culture, and of course, Canadian immigration. So stay tuned for that. We're probably going to release it as a podcast. And as we go back to our website, you'll see that we also have the podcast. So if you're traveling and you want to listen and you don't have the ability to view, maybe you're driving, maybe you're riding on the transit, you can go here and watch. There is a ton of content here that is all available in audio format. And this is where it all got started, was the Canadian Immigration Podcast. So we'll see how it all plays out, but that's just another tool and a resource for you. So watch for the trivia. All right. Any last comments before we sign off, Alicia?
No, I think people should just keep track of what's going on with the express entry draws and make sure that your profiles are up to date. If you missed it before, take a look at the article that I have that Cedric and I wrote about making sure you've updated your Canadian education. If you do have Canadian education credentials, there's 3 new questions. Make sure everything's up to date in your express entry profile so you're not missing out on CRS points.
Excellent. Now, I'm just going to pull up one last follow-up here. Armin's been a faithful follower for a long time, so let's just provide a little bit more clarification for him. Just give me 1 second here. Let's pull this one off. He says, thanks, but that link specifically says if you've applied to extend it before the expiry of your work permit, nothing about the interim. Mine expired in May. The interim email was in August. And I'll just touch on this briefly and then Alicia can add to it. But it's interesting, when I brought this up with IRCC, they basically said, well, the email that goes out, boom, gives you authorization to work. And so don't ask me how. I didn't, I prodded a little bit, but clearly it was like, whew. So I didn't press with regulatory authority for it other than the edict from on high. And so they take the position that if you have, if you've received this authorization, then you have the ability to apply. So
and you're in Canada.
And you're in Canada. So there you go, Armin. All right, guys. Thanks so much, Alicia. Thanks for tuning in. Another awesome live Q&A. Cedric will be up next Tuesday. I'll be back Wednesday, and Alicia and I will see you a week from today. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.